Welcome to Mysteries to Die For, and this toe tag. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is normally a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you at the heart of a mystery. Today is a bonus episode that we call a toe tag. It's the first chapter from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, and thriller genre. And today's featured release is The Chemical Detective by Fiona Erskine. All right, so Fiona set her book up a little bit differently. There are chapters, but they're more like sections. So what we're going to do today is read what is called the prelude, which is kind of like a prologue. And then we're going to read the first two sections of what is called overture. Well, now that I flipped up my pages, let me get back to the beginning so I can start reading to you. All right. Teesside, Thursday, 24 February, Teesside, England. The trouble with Semtex is the smell. Dogs can sense it. Most humans can't. Boris could. Not the plastic explosive itself, you understand. Neither RDX nor PETN, the main components, have much of an odor. The scent comes from the tracers added to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Hands like his. Chemist's hands. Wide hands with long fingers, calloused from handling hot glassware, thickets of black hair curling over the knuckles and between the joints, hands now gripping the steering wheel of a 5-axled truck hurtling toward the Zagrovial factory in Teesside. Boris only carried a small amount of Semtex these days, just enough for his personal use. He kept it in a Tupperware container, wrapped in cling film, under his sandwiches. Sentimental value, really. He'd moved on. To some, it might look like a backward step, from laboratory shift work to long-distance truck driving, but only to those who didn't know the tedium of analytical testing. The same samples, the same tests, the same results, hour after hour after hour. Not like the old days when you had thorny problems to solve and real fires to fight. Nothing was more boring than a well-run factory. He was glad when they sacked him, glad to be free of the monotony, glad to be out on the road. And these days, his insights into tracers was a key skill for the job. Boris yanked the wheel to the left and hauled the truck into a lay-by with a view. The chemical plant skulked on the far side of a chain-linked fence. One factory was much like another. Plumes of steam billowed into the sky, glowing orange in the sodium lights, bright against a dark winter day. He traced the familiar shapes in the condensation on his side of the window, an hourglass, the cooling tower curving to a waist and then flaring out again. Two thin vertical lines, the nitric acid absorption columns lit up like Christmas trees. 3 circles, the ammonia storage spheres, massive metal balls trapped by sturdy legs to stop them from rolling away. A rectangle, the ammonium nitrate piling tower looming over the A19, the main road out of Teesside. The wind whistled up the river, screaming through the gap between the warehouses, bringing with it the faint whiff of sulfur, reminding him of home in the Czech Republic, the Semtex factory where he trained. He watched the car park from the lay-by, waiting until the last company car roared away before driving up to the gatehouse and presenting his papers. At the collection bay, he plugged a small black box into the vehicle's lighter socket. It beeped and flashed, a red light showing it had located the Zagrovial computer network. He tucked the jamming device under the passenger seat before turning off the ignition and stepping down from the cab. Snow science, right? 2 metric tons? The bald warehouse man tapped on his keyboard. Bloody systems down again. Boris slid his papers through the hatch. 20 metric tons. Fertilizer grade? Explosives grade. Boris jabbed his finger at the product code on the order. Are you sure? Baldy frowned and inspected the order line by line. He picked up a phone, running a hand over his eggshell-smooth head as he waited. When there was no response, he shook his head and cursed. Lazy tossers, all buggered off early. He slammed the receiver back in his cradle. I'll get you loaded up in a jiffy, mate. The metal ramp screeched against the concrete floor as the forklift truck drove into the back of the truck, delivering the first pallet. 2 forklifts worked in tandem, an intricate dance, weaving and turning on a dime as they loaded the cargo. Within 15 minutes, it was finished. Fast and skillful, these old men of the North. Boris secured the load, signed the paperwork, and drove out of the factory. Click. Location. 54.597255 by -1.201133. Intensity 800x. Instead of taking the A19 south, he headed east to Haverton Hill and a decrepit warehouse lying in the shadow of a blue bridge. A damp chill rose from the misty river. Boris shivered as he opened the cab door and scanned the quayside. A tall, thin man materialized out of the fog, moving slowly with labored, jerky movements. He emerged into the sidelights, dark coat, spiky black hair, gaunt white face. The spider. Christ, this run must be important. So? The question came out as a hiss. All good, Boris pointed to the trailer. No problems, boss. The spider pressed a button, and the battered doors began to open, groaning and squeaking with neglect. Boris backed the truck into the warehouse and hopped down from the cab. How long will it take, he asked, as he unlocked the back doors and dropped the ramp. Assist, the spider ordered. Time is of the essence. 2 hours later, Boris's arms ached as he maneuvered the truck onto the southbound motorway. Bloody amateurs, leaving him to do all the heavy work. Boris made good time to the south coast, skirting London after the rush hour. Transport of explosives was not permitted in the Channel Tunnel, so Boris and his truck boarded the ferry to France. Click. Location, 51.12646 by 1.327162. Intensity, 152x, 648c. Boris stood on the deck, sipping the watery English coffee as the white cliffs of Dover receded into the mist. Plain sailing from here, he shivered as the towers of the titanium dioxide factory beside the Port de Calais hove into view, and he returned to his truck. Click. Location, 50.96622 by 1.86201. Intensity, 152x, 648c. The drive through France was uneventful as far as Strasbourg, but a young border guard flagged him down at the crossing into Germany for extra checks. So much for a borderless Europe. Boris remained calm. It had happened before. Nothing to worry about. The ginger-haired guard puzzled over the papers, wrinkling his brow. Do you know what you've got in there? Yes, Boris lied easily now. After the first few runs, he knew how unlikely it was that anyone would check, and even if they did, what would they see? Ginger picked up a phone and moved out of earshot. A few minutes later, he marched back. Drive carefully, and he waved him on his way. Click. Location, 48.5857412 by 7.7583997. Intensity, 152x, 648c. Boris drove past Baden-Baden. After lunch near Munich, he took a nap in the back of the cab. When he woke, the stars guided his way to Salzburg and the crossing into Austria. Click. Location, 47.7994 by 13.0439. Intensity, 152x, 648c. As he approached the mountains, snow started falling, wet flakes that melted on impact. A weather report on the radio warned of treacherous conditions and several inches of snow up ahead. Great for skiers, bad for lorries full of explosives, and worse. Best to cross in the morning. He slid into a lay-by. A police car drove toward him, slowing as it passed on the opposite side of the road. Boris stared into the snowstorm, craning his neck to make sure it didn't turn back. Not that he needed to worry too much. The dispatch papers matched the dangerous goods note. The bags had the correct hazard warnings. All the papers were faultless. None of the inspections on any of the runs ever uncovered a thing. After all, Who wanted to poke around inside bags of explosives? You could hide anything in there. Overture. Slovenia, Saturday, 26 February, Kranjskabel, Slovenia. A strange bed, a naked man, and a few hours to kill before the explosives arrived. The day was looking up. Jack stretched, savoring the smooth cotton sheets against her skin. Snowflakes danced through the web of ice on the sloping attic window. In the dawn glow, she could just discern the layout of an unfamiliar room. 2 doors, one of solid oak with a tongue-and-groove paneling, brass hinges, and a sturdy lock. The other, a flat, sliding panel leading to a modern shower room carved into the corner of the attic. A pine bed, wardrobe, and chest of drawers, a leather sofa, and a couple of metal stools tucked under a bench that divided the kitchen from the bedroom. From outside came the faint swishing and rumbling of a distant snowplow. Inside, the gurgle of a fridge, creaks and sighs of an old house waking up, and the steady, slow breathing of the man beside her. Jack breathed in musk and licorice, and a faint scent of nitroglycerin, her scent on his body. She slid backward across the tangled sheets and ran her eyes over the golden curls decorating the pillow, down the ridge of his spine to the curve of his buttocks, sturdy thighs and powerful calves. Definitely a skier. One foot hung off the edge of the bed while the other was tucked under a leg forested in fine bronze hairs. A tall, blonde skier, athletic, and much too young for her. She grinned as she reached for the quilt, curved applique ridges between her fingers, uneven stitching, not machine-made, and gently covered him. He stirred but did not wake. The room smelled of pine resin with a hint of lemon, clean and tidy. Well, at least it had been before last night. Her eyes followed the trail of cloth across the oak floorboards. Her coat and hat hung on a wooden peg near the entrance door, but her long boots had toppled over and lay at angles to the pashmina snaking across the floor, coiled around a scarlet bra and matching thong. There was no sign of her dress, but on the chest of drawers in the corner, she could see his clothes, neatly folded on top. When had he folded his clothes? While she was asleep? Certainly not as she was undressing him. The guy from the karaoke bar. Nossa, what had he done to her brains last night? She'd known he was trouble the moment she heard him sing. What had she been thinking of? Oh, she loathed office parties, but her boss at Snow Science had insisted on it. Team building, Laurent said. A bit of fun. Laurent was a fool. She slid down the bed, covering her head at the memory of Laurent's excruciating impersonation of Charles Aznavour. He'd insisted on a drinking game afterward. Sheila and Rita had the sense to refuse, but Jack could never resist a challenge. And then the man with the golden curls took the floor. The moment he opened his mouth, Jack was hooked. His voice emerged an octave deeper than she expected, and he sang with authority and passion, the pitch and cadence perfectly controlled. His voice rumbled right down the small stage, across the wooden floor and up the soles of her feet, tugging at the tight knots that held her together, unraveling all the cords of restraint with the song. An old Russian lullaby, one that she knew so well. Had she stared too hard? Clapped too loudly? Was that why the singer with the deep voice and lopsided smile singled her out afterward? She wouldn't have danced at all if Laurent hadn't made such an ass out of himself. Sitting too close, breathing too hard, whispering in her ear, escaping to the dance floor was intended to put some distance between them. Jack always danced alone. Laurent followed her, his man bag on one shoulder, lurching and gyrating, arms outstretched in invitation to an inappropriate waltz. The stranger interposed himself, moving between Jack and Laurent, a subtle, sinuous barrier, increasing the separation until the drunken Frenchman found another target for his amorous attention. Jack danced on for a few tracks, just for the joy of the music, and then made her escape. And there he was, outside the bar ahead of her, waiting. Something in his eyes gave her pause, drew her in. She could have walked straight past. What was it that held her, made her stop? The gentleness of his touch as he helped her with her coat? The deep voice bidding her good night? Had she imagined an inflection, an upturn, a question? There was no mistaking the smoldering fire she glimpsed before he hooded his eyes and turned away. It had been a long time since a man had looked at her with such honest desire. A very long time. And oh, amor de Dios, how she had missed it. Wait! Her lips found his, and then there was no mistaking the interest with which he returned her kiss. Gentle, searching, increasingly confident. Hot lips and strong arms. She remembered him asking, but had no memory of her reply, or how they ended up at his place. Time to face the morning, after the night before. Careful not to touch him, her detailed inspection must have registered. He brushed the curls from his face and wrinkled his nose. His eyelashes fluttered, and his breath became shorter, shallower. She slipped out of bed and wrapped the pashmina around her. Where was her bag? Dropping to her hands and knees, she spotted it onto the bed frame and took it to the bathroom. The scent of lemon behind the sliding door hit her like a wave. She sat on the toilet and grasped the edge of the sink. How much had she drunk last night? When the dizziness passed, she took stock. Clean towels neatly folded on a rail, a shower, sink, toilet spotlessly clean. Had he expected company? She opened the glass cabinet above the sink. Soap, straight razor, shaving mirror, shampoo, cotton buds, toothpaste, one toothbrush, and dental floss. A large box of condoms, somewhat depleted after last night, but no sign of a permanent female presence. Just one tidy man. Jack reached for her bag. Despite her love-hate relationship with handbags, her party clothes lacked sensible pockets, and this was the least bad option. Black with silver buckles, the fabric was lighter and thinner than leather, but textured, tough, and waterproof. It could be carried by the arched handle like a briefcase, or, releasing 3 ingenious hooks, clipped onto a bike as a pannier. When carrying a laptop or other heavy items, 2 wide adjustable back straps unfurled so they could take advantage of the padding, contoured panel for extra comfort against the spine. The pleated sides, held in the shape by concealed Velcro strips, made it capricious enough for most outings. It even had 2 parallel zippers, designed to slide over the handle of a rolling suitcase. Perfect for carrying a snowboard. She rummaged inside the bag for her phone, encountering ticket stubs, cafe receipts, coins, a set of Allen keys, a socket wrench, maglite torch, penknife, comb, packets of hot chocolate. Ouch! She caught her finger between the jaws of a vernier caliper. No blood, just a scratch, but she continued her search more cautiously. Hydrogel plaster, crepe bandage, latex gloves, paracetamol, ibuprofen, a magnet hood, PTFE tape, thermos flask, duct tape, a ball of hairy string, condoms, fuse wire, superglue, paperclip, blue tack, ball of rubber bands, sandpaper, a fold-up kite, Slovenian English dictionary, an unposted letter, multiplug, catapult, USB stick, fluorescent highlighter pens, snow goggles, earplugs, spare socks, tissues, tampons, a silver propelling pencil, a tube of mints, a packet of dried apricots, a tuning fork, and a green marble. Like the TARDIS, the bag was bigger on the inside. A bunch of keys fell out, clinking against the tile floor. Odd. She unzipped the secure inside pocket where she normally kept them, and at last, there was the phone. One missed call, and she had no intention of returning. Amid the droll of email, a single pearl from Emma with a long, chatty message about Johan and the kids. Not now, save that for later, only 1 bar of battery left. No message from Snow Science. She put the phone back and zipped up the keys before dragging a comb through her hair. As she emerged from the bathroom, the naked man sat up in bed, blue eyes fixed on her face. "Good morning." Now that he viewed her in daylight, was there a shadow of surprise? If so, he hid it well. What did he see? An athletic woman, naked except for a brightly colored pashmina and a large shoulder bag. Tall, 5 feet 9 inches and bare feet, with a Mediterranean complexion. Brown eyes, olive skin, and shoulder-length hair, dark brown, almost black except for hints of russet fire. Well-proportioned, curvy even. His smile appeared uncomplicated. No hint of embarrassment or regret, only pleasure at finding her still there. I don't think we were properly introduced last night. He held out his hand. Carol. She took his hand, smiling at the absurd formality. There was hardly an inch of each other's body that they hadn't stroked or kissed or explored last night, and yet the contact with his hand felt deeply intimate, sending a tingle straight to her core. Careful. Jack, she said. No second names. Polite, but no promises. Civilized without commitment. Pleased to meet you. The pleasure was all mine. He raised the quilt in invitation. So tempting. She hesitated and was gratified by the flicker of disappointment that rippled across his brow when she shook her head. Breakfast, then? He sprang out of bed, bringing the sheet with him, wrapping it around his hips. He handed her a robe. The faint hint of musk was his. She let it envelop her and perched on the stool as he got to work in the kitchen. A quick cup of tea or whatever you're making, she said. Scrambled eggs and smoked salmon. She started to protest, but the smell of butter melting in the pan made her stomach rumble. He heard it and laughed, breaking the eggs into a bowl, many more than he could possibly eat alone. When had she last eaten? She'd gone straight from work to the karaoke bar, changing from coveralls to a party dress in the lab toilets. There was no reason not to eat breakfast. No reason a one-night stand couldn't be civilized. Nice flat, she said. Belongs to a friend. He's working abroad. He grinned. I keep an eye on things when he's away. He served the scrambled eggs on toast crumpets, a thin sliver of pink salmon sandwiched above the little craters of butter, turning opaque where it touched the hot egg piled in a pyramid and topped with a sprinkle of freshly ground black pepper and a sprig of parsley from a plant by the sink. A small glass of orange juice and a bowl of tea, served black, fragrant, with bergamot and dark tannin. The speed and ease with which he presented 2 perfect covers made her curious. A singer, a skier, a chef, what else could this man do? Her eyes traveled around the room and paused at the bed. Amid the otherwise orderly space, it stood out, an explosion of disarray. A surge of warmth rose through her body, and she turned her attention back to the food. Jack wiped her lips with a napkin. Very good. Carell bowed his head to acknowledge the compliment. More tea? Jack shook her head. Time to leave. He was a young man with impeccable manners, but some awkwardness was only to be expected now. She would spare him the brush-off. He would have other things to do, people to see, places to go. My clothes? I hung your dress up. He pointed to the wardrobe. But I should go. Should you? He moved toward her. The glass rattled in the window above. A flurry of hail blasted the ice clear enough to reveal a storm-dark sky. No skiing today. No message from Snow Science about the delivery. Time to kill. Carell laid a hand on her shoulder, warm, gentle, and no hint of coercion, only invitation, promise. He ran a finger up the side of her neck and whispered, "Come back to bed first." Her skin tingled under his warm breath. When his lips nibbled her earlobe, she had to fight the urge to grin inanely. The good food, the cozy little attic, the storm outside, the gorgeous man, the firm bed. She might regret this, but last night she'd taken a risk, let herself go with the flow to see where it led. What did she have to lose? Things could hardly get any worse. Forget about the past. Forget about the future. Focus on the moment. Focus on the pleasure. All right, so that is as far as we are going to go into the story, but let me tell you about the rest of it. So the chemical detective is a thriller. Dr. Jaqueline Silver, who answers to Jack, is a chemical engineer putting her considerable talents to work keeping the alpine slopes avalanche free by detonating controlled explosions. When she notices an anomaly in the explosives delivery, she pulls unwittingly on a house of cards and brings down a whole lot more than snow. So bottom line, the chemical detective is for you if you like your heroes chill and your thrills explosive. Okay, I'm going to adjust my microphone. This might make a sound. All right. So this is an origin story. Chemical engineer Jack Silver has had a string of bad luck and poor choices. Carell, I don't think, falls into that category. But that has led her to where we just met her. She is a leading engineer for an organization called Snow Science that, among other things, keeps the alpine slopes safe for skiers and villagers. Cool job, but it comes with a bad boss. Yes, that is Laurent. Jack has the natural curiosity that most engineers have, and it leads her to make discoveries that bad guys are willing to kill for or to keep secret. Jack is a dynamic and interesting character who lives by her own moral code. She is tenacious and does not stay down, no matter how hard life hits her. I really got into the Jack character. There were times, like in any good thriller, you're like, dude, what are you doing? But you had to give her credit, like she did not stop. So Jack is up against several nefarious characters, all of whom are, quote, bad guys in their own way. We have Dr. Laurent, who is the petty and nasty bad boss. Apparently is also very handsy when he drinks. There is Boris, who you met in the first part of the prelude. He is a chemist turned driver turned muscle, a manipulative accountant known as the Spider. You got to meet him too. Total creepster. And there is the oxymoronically named Frank Good, who is a misogynistic corporate asshat. Some of these guys made me want to strangle them, which means that Fiona did a really excellent job of crafting them, because who doesn't love to hate a good bad guy? So Jack has help from some old friends, some new friends, a fat hooker, but she's largely on her own to find her way through this labyrinth of a thriller. One of my favorite aspects of the book is how Fiona is not afraid to kill off her characters or to rough them up. Now, since there are 4 books in the Jack Silver series, we don't go into it knowing that, or we do go into it knowing that Jack's going to come out the other end. But oh my, does Fiona make her work for it. The setting is diverse as it moves from Jack's flat in Slovenia, which I guess we haven't seen yet because, she had a good night, to the British countryside of Teesdale. You did get a glimpse at that. I'm sorry, Teesside. I called it the wrong name. Sorry, Teesside. And then it swings to the Ukraine, Poland, Belarus, and Crimea, with the brief stop in Portugal just for us to catch our breath. Beyond cool, we get to go to Chernobyl. And that, as we learn, is the Ukrainian spelling. The pacing of this book is solid. It's a nice blend of keeping the action moving, but leaves you in a place long enough that you can actually get a sense of the place. Chemistry lovers and science geeks, you will all be delighted with the in-depth knowledge that Fiona masterfully weaves into this book. But it's presented in an approachable manner that thriller lovers across the board will understand enough to get the gist of without feeling like they're trapped in a PhD dissertation. So as I was reading Boris's section, you'll notice that I read a series of numbers. That is a massive part of the thriller and the puzzle. So I'm not going to tell you what that means, but just know that you're going to want to pay attention to those as you're reading. Standing at the end and looking back, Jack's actions and her decisions were very true to her nature, as were most of the bad guys. I did challenge the actions of a few of the bad guys and supporting characters as far as is that really who that character was? But those were minor in the overall telling of a very dynamic and fascinating story. So The Chemical Detectives was originally released in the UK in 2019, and then it was just recently released here in the States in August of 2024 and is promoted by Partners in Crime Tours. It is available on Amazon, and the link is in the show notes. So about our author, Fiona Erskine. Fiona is a professional engineer. She is based in the north of England and works internationally. She has often been the lone representative of her gender in board meetings, cargo ships, and nighttime factories. Her fiction offers a fascinating insight into the traditionally mailed world of heavy industry. Fiona's standalone portrait of a Scottish factory called Phosphate Rocks, A Death in 10 Objects, made the UK Literary Review's top 10 crime novels of 2021. Her latest series introduces DI cattle in the cyber thriller Losing Control, Terror in Teesside. Fiona is passionate about music and outdoor swimming, although not generally at the same time. So, a special note if you are listening to this between February 2nd and February 9th, 2025, for 1 week, there will be the Phosphate Rocks will be on sale through Kindle for 99 cents. So check it out if you are listening to the podcast prior to February 9th on Amazon. Phosphate Rocks on sale for 99 cents. So with that, I'll remind you that Partners in Crime Tours represents a network of 300 plus bloggers offering tailor-made virtual book tours and marketing options for crime, mystery, and thriller writers from around the world. Founded in 2011, PICT offers virtual book tours for well-established and best-selling authors, as well as those just starting out their careers. PICT prides itself on tailored packages for authors with a personal touch from tour coordinators. For more information, check out their website, partnersincrimetours.com. The link is in the show notes. And then join us next week for Season 8, Anything But Murder, where identity fraud is our murderless crime, in Will the Real John Shady Please Stand Up? By yours truly, TG Wolff. All right, Jack, take us out.